I had an interesting encounter
Yeah.
one day. I went to the shop, and I'd gone to buy just a little loaf of bread, but the guy didn't have any. So I ended up having to take a big one. And I asked him, "Don't you have a smaller one?" And he says, "No." And he asks me, "Are you alone?" I said, "No, I'm not alone." I said, "We are never alone. We are always surrounded by angels." That I had no idea I was talking to a Muslim. And then I thought, oh, I'll just go for it. I said, we're all children of God, and just talking away, talking away. And he says, "What do you mean we're children of God? God doesn't have children." I said, "No, we are. You are a child of God. I am a child of God, and we all are." And then then he asks me, "Are you a Christian?" I said, "No, I'm not a Christian. I'm a child of God." And so in the whole thing, the Lord was so amazing. He turned it back to me. The Lord turned it back to me. And so anyhow, we started, back and forth. And he says to me, when you're trying to communicate something, this is the guy saying to me, when you're trying to communicate something, you've got to use the language that people know, so that I may understand what you're trying to say. And I said to him, "You know what? When Jesus came to teach, he never changed his message. The people didn't understand it, but he still went ahead with it." And the guy says to me, "Yes, but Jesus used parables so the people could understand, what he was trying to say." I say, "Yes, that's true. He used parables." So I say to the guy, "So what parable would you have me use if I was trying to tell you that you're a child of God, I am a child of God, and everybody is?" And he could not find one. He says, "Okay." But eventually the Lord turned it around to me and says, in the same guy, the Lord says, "You know what? You have to build relationships first." And then when they see God in you, the love of God in you, then they'll want to see what is in it. I just started laughing at myself. I shook hands with this guy and I left. I was just laughing throughout. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
God, you really turned that back to me.
But, I think, yes, we can talk to people individually on the spot like that when God directs us to, and that can be part of their journey. Who knows that what you've shared with that guy is a seed which has been sown, that maybe someone else will come along or use different language or engage him in another way, and that will be another step on his journey. And I think, most people have a number of steps on their journey that we're part of, and we may build a relationship with somebody that is an ongoing friendship, that we're involved in their lives and they're in us, or we never seen them again. But someone will have a relationship with them eventually, which will unveil that truth. But if we're looking to engage people that we know or that we're going to see regularly, then I think, a relational way of doing that is the best way, because it builds a framework of trust. And as you say, your genuine desire for love, is what they will pick up, rather than the sort of the Christian evangelist notch on their Bible. Well, I've done another one, and there's another one, and there's another one, and it really, the love doesn't necessarily always come through that. It's like, people would we genuinely want a relationship with someone if we knew that they would never accept Jesus? Would you think, well, it's not worth it then? And some of that will test why we were looking for a relationship in the first place. Is it purely for relationship, or is it for our agenda within a relationship? And I think that it is important. God so loved the world he gave. What was his agenda in giving? Well, he was motivated by love. He knew not everyone was going to accept what he gave. Didn't stop him giving, because his giving was inspired by love. And if our engaging with people is inspired by love, love is pure, love is kind, love is patient. Love has a lot of characteristics which are the foundation of who God really is, which, if that is genuine, people will feel genuinely loved and accepted. If they feel that we have a motive, that we're trying to get them into our club and get them to join our gang. And that's primarily why we want to love them, is because we want to demonstrate God's love. And actually, we want them to know God. If that is actually the primary purpose of relationship, then I don't think that's totally pure as a motive. You know, either God wants us to demonstrate love to everyone in a relational way, which is unconditional. You know, how long would I keep having a relationship with somebody if they weren't accepting Jesus? Would I cut my losses and run? Would I, because all that stuff is what, evangelism from a new perspective versus evangelism from an old perspective really needs to be examined in terms of our motives, God's motive, God's desire, what God is wanting to do. And we have to be open to see that some of the evangelistic techniques and maybe why we're looking at engaging people may not always have the right motive. Well, if God, Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing. And, if I was on a train and, sitting next to somebody and minding my own business and they wanted to engage in a conversation and God gave me authorization to share something with them or to talk to them about something, I would. But I wouldn't sit there trying to engineer a conversation to get Jesus into the conversation, because that is not real. That is me trying to manipulate a situation because I have an agenda that these people need to know Jesus, rather than everyone needs to be loved. And when people are genuinely loved, they will find the real source of love, who is God himself. So I think evangelism and our methods of evangelism and how we share that, the fact that you focused in that you're a child of God is a great thing, because that brings it back. And eventually you can open that and that God's already in you, and he's already in you trying to reveal himself to you. And he's probably inspired some of the things that you love in life. What are the things you're passionate about? It's a totally different thing with, okay, you're outside of God and God can't love you yet or whatever, or, all the fear-based evangelism, which is exclusive rather than inclusive, and the type of things that we would say to people that, you're not acceptable to God, but Jesus came to make you acceptable to God, and all the evangelistic techniques and all the different ways that we were taught, I think need re-evaluating from genuine sense of love and being God's children. Is important that people see God as a God of love, and he loves them even if they don't know him or love him, because it's an unconditional love. Them experiencing him is a discovery, and we want to help them discover that God is already at work in them, loving them, wanting to reveal his love to them, because he's their children, because they're his children, and he wants to bless his children and empower his children to succeed, and all those sort of amazing things come because we have a genuine sense of love for them, like God does, and we're not sort of using that as our, trying to get them converted, rather than to get them to discover who they all really are. And that's always going to be in reference to God. So it's a challenge, I think, these things, but it's great that God sort of turned it back, and now maybe, he'll give you some parables that you can share with people in different scenarios.
Yeah.
To be able to share stories, and I sort of, I'm finding that. And then you find ways of encountering that, because the bottom line is it's better experienced than talked about. And you've always got the option depending on the scenario, situation, to say, hey, well, why don't you just come and engage with this God who's your dad?
Yeah.
And close your eyes and just, obviously it's difficult to do that in the middle of a shop and they're serving you. But, if there's genuine relationship, it will come to the point where you will be able to do that and help. So, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged. Thank you so much, because that day I had prayed that, that the Lord would use me, like laying down myself as a living sacrifice. And so every time I've prayed categorically for that, he's brought up something. I don't really initiate it, but the way he drives the conversation, he's right there in that conversation. And yeah, that's how it kind of like down, then it goes down. I see it go down, then yeah. The way it ended was like so.
Yeah, awesome. And I think it's so important to be genuine towards a person. You know, it's like I think people sense when we're genuinely interested in them as a person rather than we're trying to convert them to a religion. And if we're genuinely interested, we'll be looking to see who God has made them to be and help them see that God has made them that way, and to help encourage them in that passion that they may have or whatever it might be. You know, and you can take it into very basic things. You know, someone let's say you're talking to someone and their interest is gardening. I mean, gardening is a wonderful, easy way to show that God is a gardener, and that he was the gardener. He is the gardener of creation, and he's the gardener of their lives. And that it's like, because their desire to grow and to cultivate and nurture and care for is directly the desire that God has for them. You know, and it's so much easier to then connect to that passion, to the master gardener, if you like, who they are just reflecting. That's a reflection of God's character at work through their passion for gardening. And you could find any passion that someone has, and you can find a way that actually connects that to the reality of how God made them, and then them discovering that and discovering the God who made them that way, or that they are his children. You know, so yeah, it's really good. Yeah, Laura, you got your hand up there.
Hi, everybody. I just want to share, it's funny because Agnes shares something and you talked about that. This is exactly my witnessing today. I'm just back from France. Sorry if I bounce, I'm on my ball. I'm just back from France, and when you talk about, you know, people being difficult to talk to or to evangelize, which we are not supposed to do like in the past, France is a terrible country to even start anything, and there's such a spiritual oppression. Is you know, you can feel it. And I've learned it's the only country where people have refused. I pray for them in the street or in a shop, you know, wherever I am. People say, oh, yes, please, even if they're not Christian, it's always yes. France is the only country where I was told, oh, no, I don't do that. Sorry, I go to church every Sunday, but I don't do that. Mm-hmm. So let's say that I've realized that my witnessing or whatever I can do in France is better to be very natural. Mm. And the first thing is I've been sorting out different family issues which have fallen into place after I asked for protocols, I asked for mandate, I went to court to remove the legal right of the enemy. And I've seen everything falling into place each time I've done something, you know. So I have had an amazing year for that. And then going for a week there, where I was spoiled because, you know, it's Nice, it was hot, it was limit to put the air conditioning on. And I went to swim in the sea and in the pool, it was great. So it was a lovely time, but I have come to a point for some time where I just talk to people because I'm easy to talk to. And I just say what I'm doing and I answer a question and you share your life. And I find amazing how many women and even men are extremely attracted when I said, oh, I've not been ill for 5 years now because, you know, I do meditation every day and I live in peace, etc. So they start to ask questions, obviously. Then I say my age and they look at me and say, you must be joking. As you know, as I'm young as you, Mike, as you know, as I've just turned 60.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just the start of youth. You know, we have eternity, for goodness sake. 60 is nothing. And they look at me and they say, but what do you do? So there, I start to say, but I'm Christian. So every morning I do meditation where I just cut myself from the world and empty myself and ask God to fill me with his love. So He fills me with his love, his peace, his joy. Every morning I start my day like that. So before I do anything else, I'm totally at peace, relaxed, and I take things in a very different way. And as I say, I've not been ill or whatever for 5 years. And I respond, I don't react, and I sort out all my problems because I have many like everybody else. And, and then they say, oh, I want what you have. What do you do? So tell me more about it. And then some people said, oh, and you go, what church do you go? Or I said, no, church is not really what I do, because Christianity or Christianism it's a lifestyle. It's not a religion. It's a lifestyle. It's having a relationship with God, who is our Father. So I go to my Father and I chat with him. And they look at me and said, oh, you're the first Christian who has spoke to me like that. And it's an easy, fun, peaceful, loving conversation where I'm just myself and tell them what I do or I don't do. And they said, oh, could you tell me a little more about it? And usually it ends up by, can we stay in touch? Or I offer my email because it doesn't involve anything else, And they say, oh, yes, please. And I say, yeah, ask question. It's not a problem. I answer in my own time, but I always answer. And you can ask all the question you want. And they say, oh, this is great. I've been to this center and they do sophrology and meditation. And it's so expensive. It's ridiculous. So when I'm in an advanced conversation or when I've seen the person a few number of times, etc., I start to talk about Les Fils d'Issachar, Mike Parsons' French blog, if you're interested to read. And it's just such an easy conversation. I don't try to push anything. I just let God take me and manage the conversation. I just share who I am, what I do, and it's fun. And those people come back to me, and it's just so amazing. So yeah, I'm really, and it's exactly what you are both, Agnes, started with and you talked to. I don't try to push anything. And when some people said, oh, I'm not sure about that. And I said, well, listen, I share, I'm not here to convince you of anything, that's the Holy Spirit who does that. I'm just here to share. If you don't like it, just forget it. So people look at me kind of, nobody talks to us like that.
I think what you're describing is this sort of living loved and loving living and living loving. I mean, that really sums it all up, because it's like, you're loved, therefore life takes on a whole different perspective, and then you represent that love that you receive to others in life. And it's real and it's genuine and it's not agendered. It's just you live, and love is around you, and people experience what real love is because you're accepting of them. And that in a sense is part of, for all of us. Yeah, if we know that we're loved, then life should take on a whole different perspective for us. I love life. I mean, there's always opportunities, aren't there? There's always something in life which is to be grateful for and thankful for and expectant of, and it's an adventure every day. It is, and it isn't boring, or it's adventure, and that adventure has an amazing thing behind it, which is God's love, and us finding, just being. I think this is the thing. If you can just be, and you're loved, then other people will experience love in through us, all of us. And I think it is great that we've removed all the techniques and all the thing. We just have to be.
Yeah, I have my electrician, my plumber, my plasterer. They said, you are always happy, always joyful. Nothing is a problem. Nothing seems to hurt you. How do you do that? And I said, you know what? God loves me. What else can I ask? And they look at me and they said, tell us more. And yes, I love life. I've always been a positive person. For a long, long, long time, I always sensed that negativity would not bring me anything. And the last 10 years, I've really worked into not thinking negative at all. So I will not speak negative and will not act negative. And it's really a discipline. It's something you have to work on. But as soon as I have a negative thought, I just rebuke it. I say, no, I refuse to have a thought like that. I will not have it. And I repent to have it. I've listened to it even 2 seconds, and I cut it right there. And as you say, my view of life is I love life. Life is fun. It's up to me to not to be frustrated, not to be shocked, not to be, how do people say, offended. So many people say, oh, I've been so offended today. I said, I'm never offended. So, and they look at me and say, how do you do it? I said, because I choose not to be. It's a choice.
Yeah.
So, and it's the thing of I am, I do, that's what I do, that's what happened to me. And people are so much more reactive to that. I'm not trying to impose a doctrine or whatever. I'm just sharing, laughing, full of life and love, totally, relax, even with people who are not nice with me, and said, it's okay, you had a bad day, I can understand that. And they just start to laugh and said, oh, you're great, and you strike a conversation. And I'm not forcing or pushing anything. I'm just myself. And it works in an amazing way.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, Patrick, you got your hand up there?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was just reminded, suddenly you talk about being on a train. I work on the train, so, if I was to shut all the doors and preach to the whole train, obviously I get the sack. But, it's quite often, I was just reminded one time when, I might help some people who restricted by their jobs, that, actually I'm not restricted because I saw a guy on the train and God said to me, preach the gospel to him. And I said, oh, I can't do that. I'll lose my job. And he said, no, he reminded me that words are just one form of communication. And he just said, talk to him in your spirit, to his spirit. And I just spoke the gospel to him. And he got off the train, so I couldn't see the fruit of it. But I think, we can all do that. I did see the fruit of one time when I just prayed for a family who were arguing, and I just sort of sat down near them and prayed quietly, specific things, softening of heart and all that kind of thing. And then they ended up apologizing to each other. So I was just thinking, there's many ways that we can evangelize.
Absolutely, definitely is. And we need to find the creative ways of just being and have that expectation of being, even if people are close enough, this cardiogenosis, this heart to heart, they feel the energy field around us, they feel the love, like Peter's shadow healing, or Jesus, they're just touching the hem of his garment. Well, is that our expectation, that someone would just brush past us or just come into our space and we are creating an environment where they're going to sense something different? And we can be deliberate about that in terms of, as you say, calling into someone's spirit, even if they're not, we can't speak to them at things, but we can engage, and we can maintain an atmosphere of love around our lives, that no matter who we come across or anyone who gets that close to us, that love can be touching them, and we can release a healing frequency around our lives. We can have rivers of living water flowing from our innermost being, from which we expect life to come, and yeah, it's not always we can see the result immediately, but we trust that we're part of what God is using to bring people into a relationship with him. And just sensing our love, our joy, our peace, the atmosphere that we create, that we're not panicking, we're not, as Laura said, we're not going to take offense, and we're not going to do that. We're not going to get grumpy or annoyed or angry. It will have a powerful effect. And good news really needs to be good news. And, I can't remember who it says, preach the gospel by all means, and sometimes use words, I think someone said it.
Yeah, that's what the verse I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like,
Francis of Assisi.
Francis of Assisi, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, words are, conversation's good, but actually there's so much more that can actually be a demonstration of God's love. And even the very frequency that we actually carry and radiate, and light that we're shining with in the spiritual sense, can touch someone's life and make them feel better about themselves and about their situation. So definitely it's not just words. There's so much more than that. But I do believe being intentional about it helps. If you don't have a flow, or if you don't release that flow, or you don't maintain that atmosphere and live from that open heaven, then you're going to live influenced by the atmosphere under which you are. And that often can be the prevailing atmosphere of the situation. There's anger in the situation, you get angry. There's, fear in the situation, you get afraid. Well, we need to not be subject to the influence of the atmosphere, whatever it is we're in, but we're bringing a different atmosphere because we live from an open heaven, and heaven's flowing through us and around us. And therefore we're looking to change atmospheres by bringing love into that atmosphere and changing and transforming it. So, yeah. Yep. Laura, you got your hand up there again?
I just want to say what you said, changing the atmosphere. One of the things is every morning I ask God to fill me with his love. I open my first gate, gate of first love, and I feel to fill me with love. And I always say that I release that love. I carry his presence, and I release that love wherever I go. And this time when I went to Nice, I had been going to Nice for 15 months. And the 2 previous years I was going, I could feel the oppression. I could really sense it was hard. This time, I never felt anything. It's like I was bringing something which was pushing away what I was sensing in the past, far enough for me not to sense it. And I was quite amazed that I was really walking very freely, not feeling that sense of oppression, which in the last 2 years I had very strongly, and feeling I was the one pushing it away. I was carrying it. That was a really amazing experience. But this is something I practice every day. And I can see the fruit in 15 months. I didn't realize that. I really had to go to a place where I could feel the oppression to realize I can carry the presence of God and push it away. Where I am, it's quite incredible. And every time I was speaking to people, they seems to be so peaceful and really saying, I want to have what you have. You feel so peaceful, so loved, so relaxed, so happy. I want that. That's what I want. So we have to carry that in us and release it to experience it, really experience all the benefit of it, and then pass it on to others without doing much, in fact, by being ourselves. And we change the atmosphere. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is maintaining that open heaven, that connection to heaven, living wherever we are under the open heaven and the atmosphere that creates, and expanding that atmosphere out from us. And wherever we get close enough to people, they will begin to sense it. Whenever I go around the world, one of the things people often used to say was, well, what do you think of the atmosphere here? Oh, it's really hard, or it's this, that, and the other. And I'm like, oh, it's great, because I have my own atmosphere, and why would I want to go into another place and be subject to their atmosphere? I carry my own. And if more Christians just carried their own, they would push the atmosphere out, because there wouldn't be room for that atmosphere when we were actually having an atmosphere that was around us. We just need to increase the numbers of people who are living that sort of atmosphere, and we will begin to change. the communities we're in, yeah, there may be stuff you have to do in the heavens and there may be other things. But if you do not have it on earth, you're never going to deal with the actual atmosphere if you don't have our life to start with and others that we gather with actually all living under that open heaven and having that atmosphere. Because if we're living subject to the atmosphere around the earth, and we're subject to that, then we're never going to change it. So yes, it's great that we're in the realms of heaven, and that's where we're seated, but then that has to manifest as a gateway into the earth through us. And if we then can do that, we will affect the atmosphere and begin to actually create an environment where we will begin to actually see it pushed out, and to see it actually change permanently. But it does require, for me, I think it requires being seated in heavenly places, knowing your identity, knowing that you're loved, knowing that you're accepted, sat there in a position of authority, and then bringing an agreement between heaven and earth, because we're living out of heaven on earth. So each of our lives can be an agreement between heaven and earth, and therefore a gateway of heaven into the earth. And that gateway doesn't have to go through the atmosphere. It's a wormhole, effectively, if you like, connecting my soul to my spirit in that realm. And therefore, what flows from my spirit to my soul into this realm is coming directly without having to go through and be hindered by the atmosphere that we're under. And therefore, we're not then under it. We have an atmosphere around us which is not subject to whatever the prevailing atmosphere of the town, city, area that we live in. We actually have our own atmosphere, but we also have the manifestation of that on earth. And when we come together corporately, we need to start to see that as a corporate manifestation, as a group of people who are actually have a beachhead or an embassy of heaven on earth and functioning under heaven's authority on earth, being the agreement between heaven and earth. Then I think we can truly deal with the atmosphere, not just not be subject to it, but actually so that the rest of the community isn't subject to it either. And that's the thing. It starts with us, our Jerusalem, then it's supposed to go outwards. And we're supposed to increase what we have in our lives, around our lives, until it starts to be manifested wider, to ultimately the ends of the earth. I mean, that's God's desire, to fill the earth with his glory, to see the kingdom of God fill the earth. To do that, we have to arise and shine and let the light come. The glory of the Lord has risen upon us, and people will come to the brightness of our rising, because what we're doing is demonstrating a totally different way of living, and living from that love perspective. And we will expand our territory and begin to force that open heaven wider and wider, so that we can have the right atmosphere, which is, the true government of heaven in the atmosphere, cooperating and working with us. So we're all in agreement, heaven, earth, the atmosphere, in agreement, a bench of three. Government, full authority, so that heaven will look like earth. And we've got to start expanding our own lives, so extending our tent pegs, but also what we do corporately to maintain, and then start engaging those everlasting doors and start opening them to see something poured out from heaven through the atmosphere into the earth, not just through us as individuals as gateways, but to open up some new gateways. Well, they're not new, are they? But they're closed. They need opening, and then they have free access to come into the earth because we've dealt with the atmosphere, And I do believe that will be a demonstration of what it is to live under a different governmental system on earth, to live under a different health system on earth, to live under a different financial system on earth, to live under every different culture, different mindsets, different attitudes, different everything. Living on earth as it is in heaven. And we've got to start establishing things to do that. I think it's so important to establish a beachhead, and even if it's just me, but I know God always wants us to work in community with others and in relationship with others. So it's going to be, an ecclesia, that is an established group of people who have heaven's blueprint, and look all different. And I think, the problem that we've done is try to conform everyone to a particular pattern and formula of what an ecclesia is, or church, as we used to call it. And they all look the same, basically, in one way or another. They all had a thing which was not what God wanted, and therefore there is no framework for an ecclesia of what you do and what you can't do, and what it looks like and what it shouldn't look like. Essentially, it's like, let's see something fresh emerge, as God inspires people with that blueprint to express something different. The whole conference we've just done this weekend, on earth as in heaven. How do we establish what God has given from heaven on the earth, practically, in reality, in our own lives, but also in corporate things as well? It's really, really important. So I think we are learning to start to rule and to demonstrate in our own lives the things that eventually will become wider and more corporate. And it will be, I don't think anywhere in the world has a cleared atmosphere with true principalities, powers, and rulers from the heavenly realm working. So where there is a bench of three between heaven, the atmosphere, and the earth, I don't think it's anywhere. I think sometimes we have holes punched in that atmosphere that allows something to be poured out from heaven, and we call them revivals, but they are sort of an inspiration that there's something more possible. But I don't want to have revivals. I want to have us living in a completely restored way and having heaven restored into the earth through us and in us and around us, and whatever we're doing corporately, to sort of expand that until it fills the earth. So it's awesome. Yeah, Agnes, you got your hand there?
Yeah, when I came back from when I went to Baxter Kruger's conference, when I came back, my prayer was, Lord, I want to go to a church where I'm being taught the right gospel of, the intimacy, that relationship, and living out of the, everything flowing from that relationship between the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and my participation in it. So that was my cry. And anyhow, after, a few weeks down the line, we usually have an ascension group that was put together by Nancy. And one of the ladies on there, she lives in Leeds as well. And so I knew I'd met her before, but we'd never spoken, to say, oh, you're in Leeds, I'm in Leeds, and that kind of thing. So, but anyhow, last Monday, I think it was, or the Monday before, last Monday, we got talking, and she's like, oh, would you like to come for coffee? And I was like, yeah. So we met up for coffee, and, she told me everything that she does. Oh, my goodness, so much. And we talked a little bit. I told her what I do, and I'm being mentored by Mike, and she's doing something, the Nest, by, So anyhow, we got talking, and she's like, wow, that's amazing. Because I said to her, I have access to such a rich database, by Mike, and, this would be a good way, to pour out, and, we could do so much together. And, anyhow, so he says, yeah, I also pastor a church. I'm like, wow, really? So I said, okay. So I went there this Sunday past. And oh my goodness, it's amazing. I'm like, Barnstaple in Leeds. I'm like, finally. Yeah, so they meet in a cafe, but it's a bit like, what you did in Barnstaple. It's like lots of coffee, lots of teas, and just what the Spirit is saying. So yesterday we did the tabernacle, the feasts, and being with the Lord and seeing what the Lord was doing, and just us stepping into that, and it's amazing, so good. So I was speaking to one of the ladies, and I said, I'm being mentored by Mike. I said, yeah, I've heard of Mike. So I was like, yeah, I'm just waiting for the Lord to open those doors, little by little, as an ambassador for engaging.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is an opportunity.
Yeah, well, in the day, I think God is moving in different places, in different ways, and it's great just to come across people on the same journey, and that's the great thing, that you're not on your own, and there are others out there, and it's great if you can connect with others existingly, um, or if you can't, be open to start something where you can connect and draw other people to that connection, so that there are lots of we need lots of places that are able
Yeah.
to help facilitate and enable that. So I'm glad you've made a connection with somebody, and I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunities for making that connection with others there.
Yeah, I think it's I know the Lord has called me to something really, really big, but I think it's a good training. It's a good training for me. And one of the things the Lord showed her, was he showed her a vision in which he was pouring water down the city hall, the civic hall of Leeds. So they're going to do that on Friday, sometime in the week. They're going to go take water and do the prophetic gesture. So, yeah.
Good, excellent. Okay, Mary, you got your hand up there?
Hi, Mike.
Hiya.
Yeah. Before I say anything, I just say thank you so much for the conference from Thursday, and the other one with the blueprints and how to get the mandate and the blueprint. Anyway, it was really, really extensive, and it just brought out certain things that I was doing, then I leave it halfway, and it just made me to realize the extent I've gone in my life, and the private business that I established before, and it didn't work out. So I just saw that same alignment, when I can't remember his name now, the guy that was talking, about the thing. Thank you so much. And also for the invitation for the ambassador thing. I don't know how that is going to work, but when I first received your email, and I sent it back, then the second one, so I was kind of busy and being sluggish to to respond to it. All of a sudden, I had the Lord start telling me, get yourself aligned, get in there, get in there. And I was like, oh, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? He kept telling me, get in there. Yeah. So eventually, when I was talking to Agnes, because, we were trying to kind of look into all the questions and, what you were trying to say to us for the answer. Anyway, we discussed that after. So then I sent it. That was when I realized that, it just gave me this peace, and it started showing me things in the dream. And I was like, oh my goodness. So this little thing that one don't even know that what it really means, it's very easy to miss something when you are supposed to be, around somewhere. I learned that lesson, and I'm so grateful to God that because of the destiny that is given to us, even though when we are being sluggish, He will still be there, being a good father to just remind you to go. And it totally changed things for me in the spirit, in the spiritual world. It was just amazing, and he showed me that I'm going to, he's training me. He put me in some governmental thing, and he said I had to just get in there. It was so amazing, and it made me so happy and be fulfilled that I'm on the right track. So that's number one. Thank you for the invitation. Then the second one, again, because I've been involved in this oil since Carrie came to Barnstable. And the oil, they are so expensive. And I started saying to the Lord, that was way, because this oil, they are just on, there's so many, and they do different things. And I've learned so much about it, and I could see the natural way that God wants to heal us. So I was praying one morning with my husband, and all of a sudden, I just started to praise God. I just started to say, it just dawned on me while I was praying, that that God has got fragrances, and these he hide in these leaves and the tree. And when I smell it, I said, this oil, they smell different fragrance. And it just occurred to me that, oh my God, this is God. This is his presence that he puts in this tree and the leaves, because they never put any oil, any fragrance in it. It just came in there naturally. So I just got that revelation, and it made me to see the oil difference. It made me to see the oil as the presence of God, his fragrance that is inside it. So I kind of now engaging his presence inside it, not actually the oil. And the revelation was so big, and I was like, oh my goodness, God, you are so good. And then which day was it? I was looking into Facebook, and there was this woman who planted sunflower in her back garden. So I don't know what come on her. She just went and put some microphone or something and put it on the leaves of that what do you call it, sunflower, and he made it closer to his phone to be recording. If you hear the sound that was coming from the sunflower in the garden, it was like, oh my goodness, Mike, I just could not. They speak, they have frequency. And he will start making, you will know that sound is not from here. It shocked me. I even got it. I'm going to send it to people to have a look. It made me to realize that, oh gosh, no wonder. They said the plants in heaven, they are alive, they are singing. Oh my goodness. And the way they look at it is that whenever danger is coming, they alert the other plants by that sound, so they know. I said, it just opened me up so big, Mike. That everything has got frequency, and they have their sound, they have their, it's amazing, the journey. So that's just what, awesome. I wanted to say.
Yeah. I mean, I did a whole session on frequency a couple of weeks ago. It's still actually up on the podcast online. Really went into the frequency and used the crystal bowls to release frequency. And actually had some testimonies this week. One of the guys who's on our therapy community, who's had a problem with his shoulder and with numbness down one part of his body, the frequency, when I released the healing frequency from one of the bowls, he got healed. And this week we used the frequencies with intent, with I am. My wife did Psalm 139, and we just looked at all the I ams in there. I am known, I am understood, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, I am not alone. And we just got everyone just to shout out, the things that they felt. I am tied to obviously the name of God, and yes, the frequency that within the name of God carries the revelation of who we are and the fullness of that. Yes. And we then encourage people to write one of their I ams that they really resonated with on a piece of paper, put it in the bowl, and then just go and play the bowl and release that frequency, to their own lives, but also out into the atmosphere. And it was great, and so there's frequency, everything is vibration, it is frequency, but we obviously need to elevate things to a high frequency, elevate it up to its correctly intent in God, as a frequency that is really manifesting love, and once we carry that frequency, we are ambassadors, we are ambassadors of reconciliation, we are ambassadors of heaven on the earth, and when God spoke to me about engaging with ambassadors last year, it was like, okay, it'll be great to sort of connect with people who really feel they're ambassadors to a people group or a nation or a language group, and see how we can together release that sound and frequency, legislate for an opening up to the kingdom, into that priesthood group, nation, continent, whatever it might be. And that was the whole point behind, asking if people felt that they were ambassadors, so that we could actually legislate and govern together to open up, where there are countries where the Joshua generation really isn't necessarily something that people are aware of, or that sound people aren't really connecting to open that up, to remove the blockages, legislate for, the Joshua generation to come out of the wilderness, So yeah, I've got a whole list of people's names and people. I'm waiting for people to respond, and when they've fully responded, then I'll work out how we can get together and do it. There won't be mentoring groups, but there'll be action groups.
Yeah.
We can actually do something to facilitate being able to to connect with people with the Engaging God program, in a sense, because we have something there that we can mentor people, but primarily to actually get the Joshua generation to cross over, to come out of the wilderness and cross over into engaging heaven, engaging God there, and experiencing their sonship. So I think we are all ambassadors. It's just, what are we ambassador of? And I want to be an ambassador of God's kingdom from a heavenly perspective, to help raise up and equip the Joshua generation to come forth, into their inheritance as sons of God, to let sons arise.
Yes.
This is the thing. That's why we called the whole conference series this year "Sons Arise."
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for what you do.
I did send out an email, Laura, to both the legislation group in the UK and the Engaging God program itself. So you can see the invitation there somewhere. But I can send you another one if you want.
When did you send it?
Oh, a couple of weeks ago.
It's funny. I don't seem to have received it.
Well, it's one of the posts on the community in the Engaging God program, but I also sent it out to each of the existing legislation groups with an invitation to for someone to just say, hey, they're interested. As you said, you're interested, I'll send you a form to fill out, and we can see it.
I seem to have always lost or I have missed it. I don't know, but it doesn't ring a bell at all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. Awesome.
I'd also be interested, Mike.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I think you check your email, because I think, I saw the kind of names that you sent it to, that Mike sent it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I made a mistake when I was doing it. I kind of forwarded it back and it came back blank. so I had to go to Google.
Yeah. Well, it's all there now, so yeah.
I sent it blank. Blank.
I think it's really important that we do connect people who have a call to legislate in a wider sense to a bit. I'm not just talking about to their own life or to their town or to even their own ecclesia, but something more to a wider sphere. It's like how do we open up India? How do we open up Russia? How do we open up China? How do we open up South America? How do we open up to people groups? They may be language groups, they may be people groups. Just really connect so that we see the sound that God is releasing from heaven break through whatever barriers, whatever hindrances, whatever obstacles, to see, well, why aren't those people hearing the sound? Or maybe they are, but they just don't know what the sound is. How do we help open that up so that sound resonates and those people can come into their inheritance and be seated in heavenly places, and then look at opening that up for their own situations, around them and their nations. So I think there's sort of 40 odd people said they were interested, and so far we've got I think about 6 people who've followed up with the form. But I'll send the form out again to those who have not yet filled it in, and once I've got the numbers back, then I'll see how we can get together in groups and start engaging heaven together and legislating together for those things to break open, breakthroughs and different things. So yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone else got anything they want to ask?
Sorry.
Go on. Yeah, go on, Ronald.
I believe you said that ARC has a mandate or something like that we can build on for the legislation.
Oh yeah, I mean, essentially, we release a lot of legislation for the Joshua generation within the Engaging God program to use. We've got a statute book here, and a whole section of that statute book is basically for the Joshua generation. And so, I will probably be, sort of encouraging people to look at that and use it, but use it to to take a piece of legislation into your own life, place it inside you, and then that inspires how you then release that yourself. The declarations, the decrees, the different things that you do comes because you carry the government of that piece of law, legislation, whatever it might be. And so we will be sort of looking at what legislation we might need. More legislation perhaps for maybe a particular country or a particular continent or people group or language group. Can we get specific language? Hey, I know the law is really looking to engage the French-speaking world. So do we need to produce a specific piece of legislation to do that? We may already have enough legislation, or actually we might think, no, there are some specifics that we're going to get revelation of that we then can use to particularly open up that people group, that language, whatever it might be. So this is much more of a working together to actually outwork some of the legislation we already have, but perhaps to develop more legislation to enable us to actually break open areas to hear the sound of heaven and to respond and to see the Joshua generation come forth. And maybe we have to break through some of the veils of coverings that people are under, but there are all sorts of things. Drop a few love bombs out of heaven on particular places or people groups, just to expose them to the reality of who God really is and to the possibilities that exist, that we can come into a totally different level of relationship with him and start to be ready to mentor the next generation and become storehouses and places where the harvest can come in. So, yeah. So
is the book of statutes available on the Engaging, or you'll make it available?
Well, if you know where to look for it, I think you can possibly find it. but what I'll do is we'll look to try and pull that together, because some of that legislation is maybe just some of it relates to here, but some of it, I know a big section of it relates more generally. And I would look to try and pull that together and produce more legislation with others to try and give us sort of, here's the statute book that we can use to facilitate things and carry. So I will look to pull some of it together. Once I know, who's interested and who wants to be involved, then I will then look at what sort of sections within that we need to develop. Because, one of the questions is, well, what specific groups do you feel that you're an ambassador towards? Or what particular things are you an ambassador? So then when we pull that together and see how many are maybe ambassadors to nations or continents or whatever, or how many are people groups or language groups, then we can look at producing something for each of those particular areas that would facilitate having that governmental authority to then start strategically legislating for it. This is sort of looking to develop a more strategic sense of how we connect, and I obviously want to see people come into their inheritance and cross over into the realms of heaven and come out of the wilderness and under all those coverings of the Moses restrictions so that they can come to be free, and help promote the Engaging God program as a way of discipling people or helping or equip people within that. Because some people are going to need help, those who then, I've seen this amazing, well, where do I go from here? And, it would be great. And eventually, I would love to see, people part of the Engaging God program in all those places and countries who were then maybe willing to take responsibility for using that program within their own nation and being a facilitator within that nation or within that people group or language group, just like Laura's done. She's really taken sort of a hold of the whole area for the French speaking people. And, I'm sure there's more to that, and ultimately it would be great if we could have representatives who would really carry the sort of mantle of ambassadors and have the authority and the power to reach out, and maybe to facilitate that. I think if we could have, if we could sort of double, treble, increase the number of people engaging with the Engaging God program, then we could look to facilitate releasing people into those gifts and into those callings by, maybe helping financially or helping to equip them, for a particular nation or whatever. So we can sort of essentially release people to be able to be an ambassador, because some people can do what they are because of their situations, and some people are restricted by their present employment or other things, which is a hindrance to them really pursuing full time. So part of the Engaging God thing is to be able to release people. Our mandate with Freedom ARC, is to gather, connect, equip, and release. Well, I'd love to be able to release ambassadors, into those roles, both governmentally, but also, so that they can pursue it. And sometimes finances stop people pursuing things, and we'd love to be able to bless. So we want the Engaging God program to grow so that we can actually release more people to help facilitate that within nations and be ambassadors. So that's sort of part of the goal. But primarily, we want to see the Joshua generation come forth. So yeah, that's sort of the way it's. Okay. Yeah, Mary, you got something there?
Yeah, just a quick one. During the session on Saturday, there were 2 shots that were put on the screen, and it wasn't clear. But I heard that the people who attended, they got copies. I was able to write division, that shot with division. I was able to write that, but the second one, they are so tiny, I couldn't see it. So I don't know if it's possible to be printed out. It's a business
Sure.
thing.
Yeah, well, what we'll do during the next week is to get all the material together, video, audio, and the PDFs,
Okay.
and we will send it out.
All right.
One of the things was actually we put on the live stream. We actually put one of the diagrams on the live stream itself.
Yeah.
But we'll try and get all the PDFs and everything out so that people can actually follow and see that through. So.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, Laura.
Just wanted to say, as a witnessing, it's not always easy to open a country, because Christine and I have been releasing a sound quite some time ago. We are going in Paris in the Spirit regularly. We released a sound months ago, and we are still waiting. And so some countries are far more difficult to open than others. Just for people to bear that in mind. It's not always that easy.
No, and I think that's why we may need to develop some specific legislation for those situations and deal with some of those in the Spirit and find different strategies for doing that, I think.
I would love to have more people joining Christine and I, because we are still 2. Despite it's almost 2 years we have been communicating, releasing sound, and we did really big things a few months ago, and we're stuck. There's nothing coming. Absolutely nobody is joining. There are doors opening with people who are just starting, but not, more than that. So it can be hard, but we have to be patient.
Yeah, Agnes. Okay, we'll just got something to finish with.
Yeah, and I was just I'm so drawn into frequencies, especially healing frequencies. And I was just wondering, do you have like a database with them frequencies, like healing bowls, or do you know any ones on Facebook that are safe? Because there's a lot of them, but I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, the group I'm connected to in the US they are called Kamia, but it's a Hebrew name which talks about frequency. And they're great. I mean, I've got, on the last thing I did with the Engaging God program, I did put the frequencies of the bowls that we use and how they relate to certain overall frequencies, like 528 and 713, and there are different frequencies, but it's the intent generally. It's what the focus is released on that frequency, not just the frequency itself. And when we release a healing intent, that flows out on the carrier wave, if you like, that we're releasing outwards, you know, and obviously it can go further afield than the limitations of where you can just lay hands on people, you know. And if you think about it from a biblical perspective, not that we have to find it in the Bible, but, you know, when Paul imparted something into a handkerchief or an apron, that was taken and then was applied to people in a different place, and it touched those people so that they were set free and delivered. So a sound is no different than a piece of cloth. It's what you impart or impute into it that can be released. And hence, you know, when I've done it online, you know, those people, some people who've been listening to the session on frequency, they felt when I played the bowls, even though they were listening online, they felt, you know, what the intent was released. You know, so it isn't limited by time, space, or physical location, which, you know, laying hands on people is limited by that. And I think that's why God wants to take it from the focus on one person with one person into being able to release it on a wider scale, even into a nation. You know, actually even releasing it into something which is way beyond just a meeting or something. And I think, you know, we will use some things like that when we get together to legislate. We'll use frequencies that we can release, maybe declarations that we are going to make, but carry them, you know, actually into an atmosphere, a frequency in the atmosphere, using different things. So yeah, we'll be sort of working on it when we get there. So anyway, okay, all right, I'm going to leave it there, and